Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Ghoulfriend Hour. I'm your host, your ghost host, Morgan Fezza.
And I'm your ghost that likes toast, Taylor Jones.
And I'm the ghostess with the mostest, Rachel Faust.
And today
Mine's never
we
gonna be the
have,
same.
do you want to come up with a name, Rick? Do you want to shoot a name out there?
I mean, at this point, we've got everything going off of Ghost and Host and Toast and hey, I'm Mr. Roast.
There you
So
go. I like it,
Oh,
Mr.
There
Roast.
it is.
So there you have it, guys. Our guest today is Mr. Roast, also known as the fabulous Rick Garner. So Rick, I'm going to pass the torch to you, and we are going to let you introduce yourselves because you have a plethora of good stuff to share with us today.
You already get bonus points for using that. The only other thing we have to work in is cornucopia. So if we can have
Oh.
plethora and cornucopia used, then
hmm.
it's solid.
Yes,
We've
yes.
covered everything. Yeah, so hey, I'm Rick Garner, and we go back to, oh my goodness, I guess it started in the early 2000s. Basically, we like to just say established 1999 because, hey, even Prince has a song about it, and you farting like it, so it's might as well reference that. Um, that's when basically a little bit of a journey began for us, and by us I mean Darren Dito and I helped start this little product at the time called Unexplained, and it was on a local CBS affiliate in Jackson, Mississippi. That's where I was born and raised, Mississippi kid, and then moved up to the Maryland area in 2004 and been here ever since. But Mississippi will always be home. And obviously, the South is full of stories. I think ghost stories are like a quintessential part of a person's or a family's history
Yes.
because I've always looked at them as, it's almost like a ghost story or an urban legend. It kind of begins with like a shred of truth, right? It's about someone or it's about some place, and there's a fact, there's something that happened. Now, as any good stories like to do, they kind of grow and things get a little twisted and they get a little bigger than life over time, sometimes. But that's also why I think the South with yarns and stories, I mean, stories can be told anywhere, but I just feel like, again, being a Southerner, I just feel like we kind of have a corner market on those to some degree anyway. But
So can I interrupt you really quick? So as a
absolutely, I'm just going to
Southerner,
riff for an hour, so you just got to stop me. So
no, I wanted to do it before we because I never know when we're gonna kind of like change topics or anything. So when you talk
sure.
about ghosts and being a Southerner, right? I have to ask
Hmm.
this question because we have a favorite TikToker that has been teaching us Southern
Bless you.
vocabulary, right? And so
Thank you.
everybody has different vocabulary for ghosts, supernatural, entities. What did you, your parents, grandparents, or aunts, uncles, whatever, did you guys call them ghosts or did they have a different name?
Oh, there's certainly, I think, Old South, the phrase hate is
Oh
used a bit. Hmm.
my
Okay.
God.
Okay, I'm very excited
So,
about this.
so that's a thing. I feel like that was a little bit more my grandparents type, and then maybe further back. I mean, it's kind of one of those things you don't hear that phrase very often. I also look at it as like hate and haunt are really very similar. So it's
Good
almost
point.
like, where did that come about?
True.
And why was, that even a term? But and I feel like there may have been some others, but I do appreciate that one of my hosts for Unexplained, we ended up doing that for 4 years at the TV station. He said, basically, what's a Southern ghost say? Boo, y'all. And I was like, nice,
Oh no.
That's
nice.
fantastic.
Jeff Rent, appreciate you, buddy. That's I'm sharing your joke for eternity. So
I love that though. I love that. Yeah, it's always fun to hear because like you said, every story starts somewhere and it's told differently. And we have at this point, kind of go into cryptids. what, like 15 different versions of Bigfoot. We have, you
Mhm.
know, a ton of different versions of Dogman. And the more that we kind of talk to people on here, we hear about these different versions. So I got kind of excited when you said, you know, hey, I'm Southern and ghosts are the epicenter of kind of our life. And we tell all these stories. And I'm like, what do you call them?
Mhm. Yeah, and then sometimes I think you could have the term spook, which unfortunately would also, since we're talking about the South and Old South, can have a bit of a derogatory term as well. But I think,
Yes.
again, as words get twisted or used for different things over years,
Yeah.
again, it was just kind of, I think it was just a very, again, think of it as like, if something's spooky, it's like,
Yes.
well, that's a spook, basically. It's something that's scary. Now,
Yes.
again, it can be twisted into something else, but it's just funny how you do have terms and some hang around and some devolve and disappear, but haint is always just a favorite one of mine. I don't know why. It's just, I guess because you don't hear it that often, and it seems very Southern too.
I was just gonna say that haint for me, like it just has that certain je ne sais quoi to it. It's like a southern, it just has the twang in the word without having the twang.
Nice. And extra bonus point because I've never been on a paranormal show where basically je ne sais quoi is used, basically. So I feel like
Morgan's a fancy lady.
this is a good vintage show here, basically. So
Yes, yes. I think all of us to some extent, right? We got a little bit of old soul born in the wrong time period here.
nice, nice.
But yeah, so I mean
Appreciate
that's
it.
funny. I'm kind of glad that you did bring up the term spook because my grandmother who was from Wales, that's what they called them overseas. And so she, you know, she knows that I was always, I mean, she was very spiritual, but we always would like talk about them and she's like, "Oh, you know," and she would say it and I'm like, "You gotta be careful with that." Like when, you know, like we're talking about ghosts and stuff like that because it's not, and she's like, "When did that happen?" And I'm like, yep. Yep.
Mhm.
So absolutely. But it's cool to see how many different cultures, ethnicities call them different things. So but yeah, so continue on. I'm sorry, I digress. I had to ask that. And I was super elated with your response because that was fantastic.
Oh, hey, no problems, because I expect we're going to be, we're weaving, we're off-roading, we're going down the interstate, we're taking the scenic route. I expect all of it. So,
Oh, we're gonna ride the guardrail up the tree, over the tree, into the forest, and then back out onto the highway
we're
again.
getting stupid up in here.
Oh
That's all I'm
yes.
saying. So,
But tell us more. We want to know all the things.
sure, sure. So basically, I think you all can appreciate how local TV. Now, my background is broadcast radio, broadcast TV, online. So it's a full media smorgasbord, basically. But if you think about local broadcast TV news, when it comes to around Halloween, it doesn't matter how big the city, how small, whatever. They always roll out the spooky little stories. They're about a half an inch deep, but they're all about the cheesy effects and it's just trying to tell a story. So for Darren and I, we're like, why don't we actually take this a step further? Like at that time, like um the only shows that were really on was MTV's Fear, if y'all are even remotely familiar
I
with
Yes.
that,
remember that as a kid.
right?
That is a nostalgic moment. That was a good show.
Right? I mean, the whole premise and everything, I mean, it could have been basically 90% fake, but it was just the whole idea that what they were doing and staging. And again, it was really more of an experiment in fear, basically, and see who might could survive and get the money at the end. Reality TV at its best. Who's getting the money? But
It's only $1 after all the taxes, you know. Yeah, spend a
exactly.
night in a haunted house and you know, you get $1.
Here's your shiny dollar. Thanks for playing. But so we had that, and I think maybe a haunting, which was on cable. So it was very limited. Nothing like it is now, where it is complete oversaturation. Although I do feel it's kind of waned off a bit. I feel like we're on the downhill slide just a bit because some shows have canceled or whatever. But at that time, very little. And we're also like, why don't we just take this a step further? Why don't we do what we're trained to do as journalists and let's touch the stories that, frankly, reporters weren't going to touch with a 10-foot pole? Because any credible journalist is not going to really like, let's unpack what's going on here. What's actually happening, and to look at it very skeptically, because again, most of the times it's like, oh, this is all fun, it's not real, whatever. But Darren and I basically just branded it Unexplained, and then we would take once a month, 5 minutes, which is also unheard of in a news block, basically, because that's why your reports are usually about 90 seconds. 60 to 90 seconds is about normal, but for a story to be 5 minutes is a whole block, and that's unheard of. But we had a wonderful, supportive news director at the time. And so we did these. And so we looked at local ghost stories, UFOs, World War II conspiracy, anything that we basically could get our hands on. And that also led to us compiling the haunting stories, into a 30-minute special in 2001. Now, sidebar about that would be, if you think about history and something called September 11th, and also knowing how close Halloween is to that, we'd already basically finished working on this story. And so we had this dilemma. Like, you just had this ridiculously tragic event happen. Now, do we really want to be talking about ghosts and death and things of that nature in a half-hour special we prepared? So we kind of were sitting there talking it through and weighing it, and it became the idea of like, you know what? Everybody's been glued to their TVs just watching this over and over, and these things unfurl. Do this for a distraction. Do this for some normalcy. Do this because, hey, this is Halloween. Now, of course, a lot of people canceled events and all kinds of things across the country, but we rolled that out. And folks seemed to appreciate the special that we put together. And then we got a Southeast Regional Emmy out of it too, basically. So
Wow.
being able to get that award there was like, that was pretty, like, confirmation that we'd done something pretty cool. And so, to kind of wrap up that segment of history a bit, we ended up doing that for 4 more, well, yeah, from '01 to about 2004. I was doing that. Did it. Darren moved on. Did it with 2 other hosts for it, but we just kind of kept that type of cycle of every month having, a story that we worked on throughout the month, or sometimes for longer, to put it together. And that's where it started. And then, as with a lot of things, there was a break. And so, everybody, kind of did their own things, but it was the, hey, let's get the band get back together. Boy, it'd be cool to get the band got together. Kind of like, you're almost like, hey, Scoob, I mean, ruh Shaggy. I mean, can we get the mystery van here basically rolling again? And Darren and I in 2018 basically put together a Kickstarter and decided to put it on YouTube, rebrand it from just Unexplained Cases, new logo, but same approach. Like, we're reporters, so we're doing things, putting together content in a reporting, broadcast network type of style, and also looking at it skeptically, telling a story. This all weaves back to the appreciation of stories, is like, what's the story, but what's the investigative aspect of it too?
Yeah.
Either we're working with people, or we also picked up enough to be dangerous about how to conduct investigations of our own, and at the same time trying to find other stories, because
Yeah.
like you mentioned, cryptids, UFOs, there's certainly more than ghosts, but by golly, you can't throw a stone without hitting a ghost story, basically. So it's just like, they were bread and butter and easy to find. But we rolled that out then, and have just been slowly going ever since. And I'll shut up because it's y'all's show. I shouldn't be doing all the talking. So
No. Listen, we're loving this and having you on. This is, the kind of stuff we want to hear. And I think it's exciting that, you guys started this. You said 99, right?
mhm, mhm.
And then, even though you did take that little like hiatus, there you brought it back together and modernized it. And I think that's what's so neat about it, is that like you bring that like nostalgia. Like, I feel like I remember being younger, like in the 90s, and I loved, we had just done a podcast about this actually. It was Scariest Places on Earth. I always mess up the name
Mhm,
on
mhm.
ABC Family.
Yep.
And I felt like at Halloween there was so much more original TV shows, original special. They used to do like specials, and I feel like you
Mhm,
don't see that as much.
mhm.
So like you guys, it's nice to take that, from the 90s, bring it into, 2018 to current, and still bring that little piece of nostalgia with, the modernization without losing that, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so I think that's really neat. And I'm really excited, to see what else you guys continue to do and evolve and all the cool investigations. So I guess tell us a little bit more about that. The investigative side, like what goes into that, what are your most like popular sources? Like when you're on a case, what is a typical case investigation, case kind of when you're digging through it, what does that look like?
Yeah, it looks different, I think, every time. And like I said, if to look at our YouTube channel, there was also a moment, especially due to COVID, where we couldn't get out and get to stories. We decided to start streaming, so we ended up having two weekly um Unexplained Cases Live and Unexplained Cases Medium, because we're working with Miriam Faresh out of Los Angeles. She was part of the team at that time. And so, that was also taking investigations a little different, because what she was bringing to the table was the concept of remote viewing. And we can also unpack that later if you'd like as well,
Yeah.
because it was interesting. But at the same time, and some people can feel differently about this, is like I feel that one being a medium or a psychic is intuition. First off, we all have intuition,
Yeah.
but the reality is that not all of us lean into it or understand it or process it or know how or want to. So if someone is really gifted in that, and that's their ability, then that's cool. And I think it's part of a tool. Like it's kind of like a tool to have on a team or in your proverbial tool chest. But to rely on that is as dangerous to me as relying on, like, here, I have a K2 meter and I'm going to walk into this house and oh my goodness, it's going off. There must be a ghost. That's the ignorance, unfortunately, and some content creators or teams even can lean into not understanding their equipment. So
Yeah.
part of what something looks like, of course, is we have equipment, but it's partially knowing how to use it. And then the whole reason why there is equipment, I feel, is it helps make good TV, as they say. Because if you have a device and it's flashing or it's making noise, well, that's something to focus on.
Yeah.
But in reality, and y'all may have experienced this too, I can go by a house and I can be like, haunted, because it's not just because, oh, it looks spooky. It's just kind of like I feel like, hey bro, what you staring at? Basically, I'm not we good, not messing with you, you're fine. Basically, it's almost kind of like that cliche of someone standing at the window looking out. I don't visually see that,
Yeah.
but there are times where it's like, there's a story there. And that's also part of the reality, is there's stories all over the place. So as far as a process, what I love to find is like, if someone says, "Oh, there's this thing happened and this, and oh, people got freaked out or whatever," I'm like, "Okay, that's great, but yeah, I'll pass on that." But if you have like, "Oh, there's this whole story, people have encountered things, here's this, maybe they attribute it to such and such, but is it such and such? Uh, this happened. Well, this doesn't seem to even be related to it." And you have all these things, and it's like, all right, let's weave that into a story. Let's navigate that to how we've done journalism for umpteen years. But then let's either work with a group or an individual, or if we have to, let's do it ourselves. And then let's switch it over to an investigation. Let's do the spirit box. Let's do the EVPs. Let's do the EMFs and everything else and see what we get. most shows, as I think hopefully most people realize, they may look like they just walked in there. They take a whole week, maybe two. Uh, they have the budget and everything to do that, and they're hanging out. And what looks like, oh, they just came in and got all this one night, it's like, no, that's actually woven together, and that took about a week to have that. Or maybe that one major experience just happened to be one night of being there. Most of the time for us, we're just going in one night. And so what we get is what we get.
Yeah.
And a lot of content creators would be like, oh, I didn't get anything, so I can't post this, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's actually part of investigating. You're going to not get something happen every single time because, haints are not basically trained monkeys and basically are going to do whatever, hey, look, there's somebody to perform. Yay!
Well, we live in that instant gratification world where it's
Right?
like, oh, I need something right now. We have
Mhm.
no attention span.
Exactly.
Literally, Rachel, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just thinking that.
It's kind of like, okay, come on, ghosties, where are you? I've been here for 15 minutes. And it's just like, that's almost like kind of the analogy of like, you walked into someone's home basically, and you're like thinking that they're going to be at your beck and call and feed of serving you. Now, a good host would want to do, what do you need? What can I get you? Whatever. But, you're not going to come in and be like, hey, you know what? Bring me all the things. I'm coming into your place. Who does
Yeah.
that?
I always say that we are the shake and bake generation because,
Nice.
like, there's no more of that, traditional, that home cooking, that slow build, that,
Mm.
delicious from scratch food. We're like, we're going to throw a chicken cutlet in a bag. We're going to shake this baby up and we're going to bake it because we need it in 5 minutes.
Who's
And
cooking, Morgan? I'm door dashing. Come on, girl.
Right?
can
See?
we just digress very quickly so you can tell our fabulous, I'm trying to think of a fun name for you because I was going to say our No, I can't come up with something. I was gonna say our haint something, but can you tell our
Booger
haints?
haint.
I need like a goofy because Mr.
A
What do we
booger
call you,
haint.
Mr. Roast?
Mr. Roast? Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need a better
No,
better
Morgan,
nickname.
booger
But
haint.
anyways, so what I was gonna say is can you tell Rick about your little Wawa incident?
Mm.
Was it Wawa
Me?
when you brought the
Okay, this is like nothing about this is
She
nothing about
blocked it out.
anything. So I confessed last year, my family's Thanksgiving, that everyone was supposed to bring something. I don't cook. I do the bare minimum to be alive.
shake and
And-
bake, baby?
And
Ricky Bobby.
Wawa was still open on Thanksgiving. So I door dashed a couple of those family sized that mashed potatoes to my house. I put them in a pot, whipped them all up, made them hot,
Wow.
and nobody ever knew until this year. So
Wow.
So I had to throw that in there because I'm like,
I was
here
like,
we are,
"Oh,
we're talking
God."
about instant gratification, just quick. And she's like, oh, I DoorDash. I was like, oh, well, you have to tell Rick now because so
See?
yeah, so but
And
yeah, we definitely
no one was any the wiser, so it's
Yeah.
fine,
Exactly. Everyone was good.
until
I made
now
my
you
contribution.
spilled the tea last year and again. So I mean,
She just outed herself to everybody now, so all the fans know she doesn't cook.
It's
Right.
fine. That's fine. Send me stuff. That's
it's fine. No,
We
DoorDash
make a
is very
PR box,
helpful.
so just get DoorDash all the
Hey,
time.
we catered Thanksgiving this year and it was the best ever. So
boom. Mhm.
Nothing tastes better than when you don't have to cook it. I'm not gonna lie, because sometimes
And there are less calories that way too.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, so we had to digress for that very quickly.
yeah,
But
call me out real fast. It's fine.
we love you, Rachel. That's my
It's
favorite
fine.
story.
Yeah.
It's okay because it's almost equivalent to you always talking about how I get hit by the car. You know how that's your
Oh,
favorite
that's-
story? Yeah.
I love that.
So mashed potatoes, car
I just love
accidents.
your
We're a fun bunch,
storytelling
Rick.
of it though. Your storytelling of it is just what I love. So
Yeah. So anyways, we're gonna skip past that. Well, that's a
Hmm.
story for another day, Rick.
I'm a little concerned basically of people getting run over. I mean,
Listen,
it's-
listen.
He's
I'm
alive.
whole.
Alive
I'm
and well.
whole. I might be a little unhinged after the accident, but that's okay. I mean,
it's fine.
unhinged
got-
maybe
she's got
corrected
two
a
brain cells
couple.
left.
Yeah, I'll say it might have added a couple brain cells.
Oh, wow. That's
No,
impressive.
but yeah, so yeah, so I do get what you're saying, and I think it's important to say that on the podcast because we do live in an age where now that social media is just so readily available, one of the things that I often say in our podcast episodes when we are interviewing people is, education is so important. There's a lot of people, and one thing, and everybody who listens to this podcast knows that it is a pet peeve of mine. I don't like dabbling.
Mhm.
I think dabbling is so dangerous. And I think that if you have a podcast or you have a forum or any kind of platform, especially in the paranormal community, you need to be able to tell people like, this isn't instant gratification. This isn't to be disrespectful and go in and start making demands. Like spirits, paranormal, whatever it is, they're just like us, and to treat them with respect. And, you wouldn't just walk into like you said, we wouldn't just walk into somebody's house and be like, hey, do a flip, do a cartwheel. Like you would be
Right.
like, you'd sit down, you'd warm up a little bit. So, if there's one thing we can say, maybe don't be shake and bake.
Exactly. Don't be
Be
Ricky
low and
Bobby.
slow. Be a nice
R-
crock pot simmer.
Yeah, Ricky Bobby's awesome, basically, but it's like, come on, you wouldn't want him doing an investigation
No,
either, basically. I mean,
not on fire. I'm on fire.
of course, I'm a Will Ferrell fan, and that's classic Ferrell, basically. But
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Will Ferrell he's the GOAT for sure. He is the OG. I don't think anytime we watch any of his stuff, I always say to my husband, I'm like, I wouldn't be able to tell him like in person, like serious, or everybody says that he like never steps out of skit. And I would be like, how do you not laugh around him? How do you know
Right?
when he's being serious?
How could you have a serious conversation? Of
Mm.
course, then that's usually a problem with me, basically. If someone's having a serious conversation, it can only go so long before I got to lighten the mood, basically. We're going to throw in something. And
I always get stressed out when we're making podcast episodes, and Rachel and Taylor can attest to this because I can't go probably more than 5 minutes without cracking a little jokey joke or like sarcasm. And then I'm like, I have to remind myself, I'm like, this is like this is a true crime episode. Like, I probably shouldn't be joking about like somebody like murdering their parents. Like, that's terrible. Like, it's like, I'm not joking about that, but I joke to lighten the mood. So I'm glad that you kind of get that because, like,
yeah, that's where in that type of situation, you wouldn't want to use the phrase like, hey, you're killing it.
yeah.
Oh, or you mean like how
What
last
did-
episode
what did
with
she
the
say?
pie?
I knew you were gonna bring it up.
Last episode we were talking about was
Zach
the
and
Zach
Addie
and
in
Addie
Orland.
case, and apparently the girl got baked, and so Morgan was like, oh yeah, they have like a whole what did they call it?
A shrine.
A
Or like an
shrine,
offering.
yeah, and she was like, it'd be really nice if like people, instead of leaving
Somebody
like
baked
liquor
her
and stuff,
something.
yeah, bake her a pie or
I said
something.
like
And then
baked
she
goods, and I
realized,
was like,
yeah, no,
maybe
Morgan,
that
we
wasn't
don't bake.
my
No.
intentions were well. That wasn't an actual jokey joke. That was like I
Yes.
caught myself. I was like, ugh.
See that? Yeah, that's one of those moments when you're over here, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this soul food tastes great. Let me take my foot out of my mouth. So,
Yes. But so I have to ask, now that we've kind of talked about like processes and things like that, and kind of, I know you said it looks different for everyone. Since you're from Mississippi,
mhm,
did you go to Florence, Mississippi? I saw
mhm.
to the house in between.
Yes.
So I love Brad, Alice, and John. They are wonderful people.
Yes.
And I'm glad that like because I think it was just recent that you went, not too long
Mhm.
ago, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, because I'm dying to hear, just from somebody else who just recently went, what that was like, what you experienced.
hmm Well, the nice thing is too is like going back to those documentaries, knowing the Welptons there basically who put it together, um, who directed it and did the cinematography and edited it. They're fabulous. I've haven't actually it's one of those to where met through the screen,
Yeah.
virtual kind of thing. So a lot of respect there and props for their work. Everyone else on there, hadn't actually met. So I hadn't met Miss Alice in person, but it's so funny. Again, she was, when we were doing the live shows, had her as a guest, and that's how there was the connection between us. The real connection goes back even a little bit further in the fact that Darren was the first reporter that she spoke to.
Really?
Or as history, she had basically just had and processed the experience that drove her out of the house when she finally, I think, got to a point to where it's like someone I think even suggested. Now, this was, if I'm timing wise, this was after he had left, but he came back to Mississippi. And so he was actually at our ABC affiliate there. And they were like, "Hey, you should call Darren Dito basically about this because he used to do all these shows on this. He'd be perfect to investigate it." So the fact that unfortunately it was a two-part episode, and I only have part one, and I still want to find part two, and he's been looking for it forever, and I have too, and I'm like I refuse to have defeat on that basically to find
Don't
it.
give up.
Not
Don't
gonna
give
give
up.
no, because when you least expect it, when you're not looking, that's when it's like suddenly here it appears. But it was so funny basically to go over there, and there's another friend, Beth Miller, who lives in town, and she's also been over to the house a few times, and I knew her basically from working at the CBS affiliate. Beth was meeting me there, but it was just kind of like I was just family basically, and walking into the house, it wasn't intimidating, it wasn't freaky, it wasn't anything. And I mean, granted, there's a little familiarity because it's like, I've seen the reports, seen the documentaries, but I also go off a feeling. And I was like, this just feels like this kind of like grandma's house. I mean, this just feels like it's just warm and cozy. It's comfortable. And as we sat around and we talked, and this is another little, I haven't quite decided if it's going to be like a little short or some episodes or whatever of it. Again, I've got this, there's a lot of cases that are under development at this point, basically, this being one of them. But to talk to her, and she is as down, who you see on that is totally her. I mean, she's 100% transparent
She is
basically.
the
And
sweetest little dumpling. I just have to say that. I love her.
that is a perfect description basically. Everything you see is her 100%, and she would just do anything for you. And even at one point she said, "You're family now," and I'm just like, "Oh." But to sit in there and to interview her and to kind of walk around or whatever, I mean, there wasn't, obviously, again, I wasn't expecting anything. I mean, I think, again, you think about a house like this, it's also under surveillance, in essence. Basically, Brad Cooney's got it all wired and everything like that, constantly recording stuff. You're like thinking, well, will something happen or won't it? There were some moments that were interesting. To go ahead and reveal those would be, as we're talking, houses settle, right? And it doesn't really matter. I think maybe if it's older, and also it depends on where you're at. There's heat, there's cold. There's a lot of reasons why a house is going to pop or settle. That's a sound. When you basically hear something that is the equivalent of someone taking this part of their fist and going on a wall, I have a hard time, me being skeptical reporter brain, basically saying that's not a house settling. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And then to actually get that recorded was also the next level of awesome, because then you can hear something with your ears. Doesn't mean it gets recorded. Vice versa, something could happen, you don't know it, and it's recorded. But this was loud enough, and also to get people's reactions. It's like, okay, perfect. That's what we call nice evidence. We're going to put that over here. But the only room in the house that was sus was
Oh,
basically
brownie points for you. Brownie points for you. I like it. That's sus. He emphasis on the sus.
hey, well, I can talk the kids' lingo. Um,
I still don't understand some of the lingo. My
I
godson's
don't
like,
either.
no cap. And I'm like,
I don't know what you're saying. Where
See-
cap for what? What bottle?
See, and apparently that's no longer a thing, because I dropped that around my teenage daughter, and she's in college now, almost 20, and she was like, "Nobody says that." And I'm
oh,
like,
thank God.
see,
No, the
I'm
little
thinking
kids-
caps. I'm thinking like little cap guns or like
little
little like
kids
I
still
don't think of
do.
like caps.
oh,
No, the little
yeah.
kids
No
still
cap.
say it.
You see, and basically, like, I think they still even floss, and that is like a carnal sin, basically, for someone to be flossing. Basically, it's just like, just don't, just stop. You know,
I can't
It's-
even.
I,
I look like
you
I'm
know,
putting on the Ritz. I don't even look like I'm like like I'm flossing.
My dad pulled out the other day, what is Riz? And we were like, oh my God.
Oh my God, I
see,
can't.
see,
I
and
saw
then
a third grader do that the other day, and I was like, "What? What do you? Why? Like,
and
go
and
touch
then
some grass."
and then when did something become drip? Basically, it's just kind of
I
like,
don't. I
it's
don't
just
know.
like,
I know.
what is what so we digress into to all of these wonderful lingos here, but this bedroom was so sus because all this warm fuzzy, basically, and this is the bottom bedroom, not to be confused with the oh, well, now hold on a second, because this is where I was about to say not to be confused to be the one that she had her experience in, and I think that's actually the top one,
The top
unless,
one is where she had her, if I remember
yeah.
correctly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the top one, that's where it happened, basically. I believe, unless I'm getting it backwards. This is where I had to go back to the tape, please. Can we roll that? Um, but I walked into there and I was like, okay, are we cool? Again, it's kind of like that whole totally different vibe. Like, I walked in on someone and they basically were like, you're not supposed to be here.
Okay.
Now, compared to the experiences of other people, and again, documenting all this was quite cool, of folks who've been there, and there's like a gentleman in, like, not a top hat to a degree, but kind of something along those lines, that folks see, and they kind of get this feeling of like, kind of a little judgy, kind of like giving you the once over, basically. Yeah,
Like,
I'm
that's
not
cool. You
sure.
can judge me too. Me too. I
Yeah.
got eyes.
Right, right, and he's like the only one that fits into that category. Other people are, seem to be chill, but it also still goes to this idea that it kind of leans toward there being a portal there. Now,
Yeah.
again, that's one of the all of this is open to debate and dissecting and discussion, but it certainly makes sense if there was one in the ability to where that's how you have some entities that come and stay, some pass through. Sometimes you have something positive, sometimes you have something negative. I mean, that all can lead credits, at least logically
Yeah.
wrapping your brain around it. But it was just, again, nice visit. Went through, and typically that's also part of the process, is like after I go through something like that, even though that was mostly a visit with just a little bit of, hey, let me get an interview, and let's sit down and record some things and check it out. But to have the EVP, the K2, basically responding in ways that were interesting, intriguing, not really expected, to have the bump on the wall, to have the sensations, basically, to have, there was a kind of an organ, an electric organ that was responding in a way that it shouldn't, as in like an electrical noise, to where, again, and this is why you have to look at everything rationally. It's like the real way to investigate that would be, okay, I get it. You're saying it doesn't normally do that. It's responding conveniently to questions. You're having a sound interaction at times, but you'd honestly have to take something apart. Like, is that a short? I mean, that's the due diligence part of something. It's like you can catch that and you can be like, oh, this is evidence. But it's like, yeah, take someone's experience, take all that, but then, that's where if you have like someone like John or Brad, they're gonna come behind and they're gonna be like, okay, let's just kind of break this apart.
Yeah.
Let's peel this onion back. And then if we end up being like, can't explain it, then I'm like, okay, now you have some legitimate evidence. Otherwise, it could be something very normal as opposed to paranormal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, two questions that kind of follow that up, just because I'm interested to just get different views on it. As far as like one of the things that I've commonly found when I've talked to people about The House in Between 1 and 2, it's everybody knows it's one of my favorite documentaries. I've heard a lot from Sam Baltrusis, John, Brad, people who have YouTube videos, investigators, they've all said the same thing, that when the shift between night and day happens, that there seems to be a major shift in the energy and the way that the house feels. Were you there at nighttime?
No, this was just during the day. And
Okay.
so, and that was a bit intentional in the sense that, that was the only time I was going to be able to visit. But then
Okay.
I also wanted to be sure and do that because that's another thing. Again, what looks good for TV
Yeah.
is basically it's dark,
Yeah.
it's spooky, it's creepy. You can't really see, and there's all like this. And I, being a creator, I get it. But I've always, vehemently said is like if there's really something going on somewhere, it will be going on all throughout the day. To
Good
that
point.
point, there certainly can be moments where there are energy shifts. There certainly can be moments where things get ramped up and then they may go down. They may go completely quiet. But the reality is it's ebbs and flows all the time, basically.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of if you can hang out long enough and see what happens.
Yeah. So my second question to kind of follow that up, another thing that I've always liked to ask on here, because as we know in the paranormal world, energy is very relevant to everything when it comes to, that category. Um, I have this theory that, people's energy, so like if I go to talk to like Rachel or Taylor, right? I have a positive interaction with Taylor, she has a positive interaction with me, it amps up the conversation, you have a good experience, right? But if I
Mhm.
go to Rachel and I'm like, Rachel, like, and I'm like negative and mean, Rachel's gonna be like, ooh, I don't
Freaking
like
Rachel.
this. And, and it's all about that energy and creating that environment. So
And then Rachel's going to cut you.
she can cut me.
And I
She's
hit the
gonna, she's
center with
gonna
my
not
truck.
no cap, she's gonna pop a cap.
Oh my god.
No, but so, I like to think sometimes too, like I have this theory of I do think that certain hotspots for paranormal activity, thinking that certain people that walk in there, especially if they are more intuitive, they are more sensitive, more spiritually inclined, will tend to, I guess, kick the dust up per se. And so I want to know how you feel about that, that theory, and if you think that there's some sense to that. Like if you have noticed on your investigations, if you have somebody that kind of is going in there as like a skeptic and is kind of just neither here nor there, and maybe is kind of having as like a not the greatest encounter, but then you have somebody who maybe is, they obviously with fear, it sometimes can feed off fear, but if you have somebody that goes in there as more open-minded, more spiritually inclined, you tend to see more activity, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I get it totally. I think that's where to me a little bit of this answer is on process and like, everyone kind of has a different process that they go into something. For us, it's like the first requirement is, we're going to basically pray before going into a situation.
Okay.
Basically, so, for us, being Christ followers, our whole focus is going to be on protection and not having, any interaction with anything we don't need to
Hmm.
have warrior angels about us, and also praying when we leave to indicate, hey, like, nothing is allowed to follow us. The reason that I feel that that's quite important, and again, some if you're not a faith, you have another process. It's important to follow it because if you just walk into a situation, it's frankly almost as dangerous as basically just walking down a street and being like, "Hey, I'm just going to go inside this house." Now, you might be met with someone going like, hey, well, you seem cool. Come in. We're having a party. Or you could get shot. So, and probably leaning a little bit more to the you're trespassing, I don't know you, what you're about to do kind of thing.
Caps will
Point
be
being,
popped.
if yeah, exactly. There will be no cap or plenty of caps, or there will be dripping. It will be
Yeah,
blood.
lots of dripping.
So, so just saying. But it's kind of that idea of like if you're prepared, then it's kind of like we were also not too long ago Mike Chen, who's part of our group, and I were at a location, and I think a bit of us kind of like, even though we had prepared, we weren't quite in the right headspace. There was some frustration, and I think as it went along, basically, it was kind of like, well, you're not finding much, and that added to it. So again, it's like, and that's where it doesn't matter how long you've done something or how professional you are or whatever, everybody is human. You're going to make mistakes. But I think what's important is to realize, okay, hold on a second, you know, reset, go take a walk, go, whatever, deep breaths, cleanse yourself basically, and let's go back into this. That can apply to anything in life, because if you don't have a proper mindset, then yeah, everything's going to be poor, or it's nothing unlike, using the analogies you had earlier, would be, if you walk in and maybe you're trying to hide it, but you're in a foul mood, or maybe you're just hurting basically. Someone else who, as long as they at least know you, at least like even on a coworker type of level, if they're around you enough, they're going to be like, hey, you okay? What's going on basically? Because
Yeah.
the vibes that are being given off are pretty evident. And so I think that could still apply in investigation situations very easily.
Okay. Okay, cool. And I think that was a fabulous answer because I just feel like energy is talked about so much. And
Mhm.
I'm always curious as to like how influential do investigators actually see, you know, themselves as the energy in the room influencing kind of what's going on and amongst themselves. Because you hear about um, multiple people that I've interviewed, you hear about these instances where they have fighting kind of starts among the team, or like they go to a certain location and maybe the vibe just isn't quite right, and people start to change, or there's bickering, or or sometimes they walk in somewhere and it's a great vibe and
Mhm.
it's full of activity, but it almost like, I guess what I'm trying to say is both vibes that kind of come to the table, they can either make a negative experience or a positive experience. And I just wonder how influential is our energy to that reaction.
Well, you could even take that further. And again, this is why all of this is trying to get a little understanding of it, is what what if some, at least some, I would say all, but what if some things that happen are directly because of us?
True.
Because to me, I think it's very interesting, especially, let's just use a spirit box as an example.
Hmm.
Something, I get, what it's doing now. Not a fan of apps, basically. Everyone may feel a little bit different than that. I have a bunch of skepticism about something that's on a device that, yes, it has some tools, and it's basically what we never use it for. It's a phone. But, some people would say, "Oh, I've gotten great results," or whatever. And I'm like, well, okay, but if you have something and it's truly designed, it's a radio, you're looking for the static. But again, all of this is a bit subjective. But if you're honestly, let's say you ask a question and you're thinking of, in essence, I'm thinking of an answer, or would it be cool if it was this answer? And then that comes across. Now, was that me? It's, considering things are so subjective, I don't think that one could completely rule that out as a possibility, because to me, that's no crazier than basically saying a spirit is talking through that device. I mean,
True. True.
because
That was very
voice,
Mr. Miyagi of you. You got deep
ah,
on me there. I was like, okay, all right.
I saw a fly and I got it.
No, but
I'm
I mean,
going
it
with
makes
old school
sense.
Miyagi. But
No, I
yeah,
like it though. It makes sense.
yeah, yeah, because a voice requires, there's vocal cords, there's air, there's stuff that's going on, and yet, if a voice is coming through, then what is producing that if not some form of thought or whatever? So I mean, and that's where it's all gets into, when you have these type of devices, it gets very subjective into what is actually going on. But to that point even further, is just like, I completely disagree with, like, some teams basically might come into a situation you talked about earlier about, stirring things up, if someone came in there with the whole idea of like, I'm gonna just piss everybody off, basically. I'm gonna be running around and screaming and making a fool and cursing and doing all this, and I'm like, okay, well then, yeah, there is the concept of there's the physics basically of what you're putting out, you're going to get an equal reaction back. So if you're going to go into a situation putting out a bunch of negativity, don't be shocked when you get it back. But at the
Yeah.
same time, that's playing with fire. You don't know basically what you're riling up at that point to do that, which then gets into the things of where I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of Ouija boards.
You read my mind. That was
Mhm.
so crazy because that was my next question. I was going to ask you. I don't know what's going on, but you definitely just broke into my brain for a second because I've literally been sitting here and I'm like, don't forget your question.
There's some
And like
scary
you just
stuff in
asked
there,
it.
okay? You need to
It's
clean up
lots
a
of,
little bit.
listen, I told Rachel and Taylor, I'm like, if you were to go inside my brain, it's like a dark castle with like lots of lightning and thunder, like one of those theatrical scary
Legit.
movies, you know?
Nice. Legit.
But yeah, so I was gonna ask you about like how hot take, how you feel about certain divination tools, like what you would advise people to absolutely 100% stay away from, and things that you can use with caution, respectfully, or that maybe you use on investigations that are reliable.
Yeah, I mean, our typical set, we've got K2, Spirit Box. Um, our focus a lot of times is on EVPs, which of course that can be done quite frankly with a phone. You could have a recorder. It can also be on a video recorder as well. Any of these devices that record audio work just fine. um, FLIR, I have that. So if you're, again, whether that's a full spectrum
What's that? I've
camera.
never heard of that. FLIR?
So FLIR would be if you're there's actually you could have like a full camera, and I'm sure you've seen them where it's looking for hot and cold. Basically, it's where
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
times it's orange or blue is a lot of times the color. But there's actually a small version you can tap to your phone. It's called the FLIR One.
Oh,
And so, for us, a lot of the stuff we shoot off of is just our iPhones, basically, because you can get 4K video off of that, and it's convenient and put it in the rig. You got lights and mics, and that's how we operate. But in that case, you can attach that on there. Again, your concept there is, are you finding something that's hot that shouldn't be necessarily hot, or something that's cold that shouldn't necessarily be cold? But you have to go through all the questions basically with anything. But when it comes to Ouija boards, now a lot of people would say like, "Hey, it's just a game." And, it's Hasbro or whatever sells them. But it's like, to me, I'll always tell people like this. It's like, yeah, is it cardboard and a plastic planchette? Yes. But what are you actually doing there? You are having, or you are allowing something, someone to guide your hand.
it's the intention, right?
That's my real problem about it, is you are having something. There is the intention of when you're going into something, and I say that that's also a very key to this too, is what is your intent? What you're going into something, is your intent to help someone? Is your intent to find something? Or is your intent just to be like, hey, I'm looking for some ghosts, it's gonna be cool? Stop it. Just stop. Just don't do that. And don't run around screaming like it's just the scariest thing that you've seen all day, because that's tiring. It's like, if you're going to call yourself something, be a professional. But when you have these things, the intent is usually not well thought out, and then plus physical contact. That's usually why, like, I like a device. Some people say, well, how is any of these tools different? It's all the same thing. Like, again, what is your intent? But also, I prefer to put a device like, say, even a K2 meter away from me. Like, there's sometimes I'm holding it, but I'm also holding it at the very bottom, because my idea is, if you're going to react, it's kind of like, I don't know someone. Now, I consider myself a huggy feely person, basically. So if someone will let me, basically, yeah, I'll give you a hug. But at the same time, you don't know who wants to give you a hug.
The
So
That's me. I hug everybody, even
See,
if they don't want it.
Taylor.
boom.
Come on,
That's
See?
the spray bottle. That's the imaginary spray bottle.
Wait a minute. So I'm sort
Free
of
hugs.
two free hugs down there. So
You get a free hug shirt.
see, you could be the one with the shirt standing out on the corner, basically someone videoing you, right?
Yeah.
So I think you should. That
And
should
then
be the
I'm
next
gonna
thing
be
you
the
put
crazy
together.
lady in the white van that like pulls her in through a back door, and I'm like, get off the street.
Hey, if you have
Nice.
candy,
No.
I'm not gonna say no. Okay.
Pass.
I like candy.
Taylor needs to watch the "Hey, don't touch me there. That is my no square" video, like the stranger danger.
Let's
Oh
see.
Lord.
See, actually, Tay Tay is basically the one who's most likely to, disappear here, basically. So you've received a new
Yeah,
sticker,
you may be an unexplained case, Taylor.
Taylor, we're not
Yeah.
doing an episode on you.
right?
Our
I
next
mean,
team bonding
It's for
activity.
science. It's for science.
oh, it's for
Science.
science, she says.
No,
It's-
we're doing a
it's for
team
the
bonding
podcast.
activity that's strictly self-defense and like safety, stranger danger, Taylor.
You
Listen
two are now officially responsible for Tay. So I mean,
You're
All
getting a
these scary
backpack leash.
Scenarios.
Taylor is literally getting a backpack leash.
Wait, no, because that's actually so it's a quick story. Me and my sister 2 summers ago went down to visit my aunt, and we were driving from New Jersey down to West Virginia. And along the way, we were in like kind of slow traffic. And so this big trucker guy comes up next to us. He's driving or whatever. And all of a sudden he looks at me and he waves. And so me being me, I'm like, and my sister goes, "What the hell is wrong with you?" He wasn't following behind us, but he ended up like he kept trying to pull forward and like be up next to us because he was so excited. I'm like, he just looks like an old man that probably hasn't been home to see his wife in a while. So I just made his day. And she goes, "No, now we're gonna get kidnapped because of you." And I said,
Taylor, have you seen
Joy?
Joyride?
That's how my brain works.
You know what? I'm still
I'm like,
here. Am I
everyone's
not?
a serial killer.
Oh.
He looked like a sweet old man to me. Okay.
No,
See-
no,
Yeah,
like
that's
hate
a
at all.
sweet old
Because
man.
I
No.
love our truck drivers. I think you guys are fabulous men and women.
yes.
But I've seen enough horror movies about what is it? Is it Hostel? No, not Hostel. What's that one I'm thinking? Is Joyride, and then there's another one with a trucker where he tears the guy apart. But don't let that be you, Taylor. That's
yeah.
It won't.
the
It won't. That's why I always have somebody with me.
Oh, see,
Yeah.
that's good. See, that way you can be your genuine self, but then you
Yeah.
always have some backup. So
Exactly.
that's good. So don't go changing. Don't make them change you, Tay.
Thank you,
Come on.
Rick.
Rick. This is tisk tisk.
Yes. Yeah, I'm enabling her, aren't I? Hmm.
Just a little bit, you bad influence. I love it though. So, yeah, so we were talking about the Ouija board. So on a
Mhm.
scale of one to hate, absolutely hate, what is your score?
Wow. So on a scale to hate to hate, basically. I
Absolutely
mean,
loathe.
I mean,
No,
I
I'm
mean
tired.
that yeah, I feel like we're going to Grinch here. Loathe entirely. So I mean, to me, it's like my answer to that would be that's just why I won't even film anybody using that. So put that into your ranking as you want. It's like we're not going to
Okay.
use it. I don't want to film anybody using it. It's just like no,
Yeah.
and it's in the same category of like if somebody's going to try to be like, oh, we're going to come in here and conjure type of thing. I mean, it's kind of like even a seance to me, even that whole thing, it just feels weird, and again, to me, I think it's your intent. And like, if our intent is always basically that's why, our whole statement is preserving history by documenting the strange, paranormal, and unexplained. And the reason
Yeah.
that's our mission statement and very first thing is to preserve history. So often stories disappear. People pass away. Yeah, they may have told the story 1,000 times, but if no one recorded it, then it's just left in people's memories until they're gone. So if we can actually record enough individuals and interview them and say like, what's your experience? That's the thing, is a lot of people have crazy experiences but don't want to talk about them because they feel like they're going to be judged.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of times I'm kind of like, I've heard some stories. I'm like, did you experience that? Did you? I mean, I'm saying it in my head because again, we're human, and so
Yeah.
it's too easy to be like, okay, that is too crazy for me to process. But if a person is like, listen, this legitimately happened to me, they're not pulling our legs, they're not trying to sell us a line of bull, but this is what happened. Well, now it's captured, and then I have to respect it just as equally as if some people are like, hey, could you not show my face? Or, hey, could you change my voice? And I'm like, I'm fine with that because everybody's level of comfort, they may want to be anonymous, but at least
Yeah.
it's like, I got your story.
Yeah.
It's now recorded, it's documented, it's not going to go anywhere. And then if we can find something to collaborate that, ideally with more than just one tool, because again, if a K2 meter goes off, but you don't have anything else that you're working with, that's just one tool. It's better if it's like, okay, what are my feelings? What is this device? What is this device? What is that person feeling or seeing, basically? Put it all together, and then you can have something that's scientifically curious.
Oh, I like the eyebrow lift there.
Hey, that's a little Spock, basically, so, live long and
So I'm
prosper.
gonna do my dirty little raccoon hands because I'm getting
Oh.
excited because I want to ask you my little I want to ask
I
you
think you're being, I
about
think you're being judged down here, but that's okay.
100%,
That's not-
100%. But I want to get into like the nitty-gritty like ghost stories and some spooky
Mm,
things.
yes,
Little
okay.
raccoon hands are going.
Yeah.
So, what, so tell us.
Start a fire with
Yeah,
those.
start a little flame, get a little flame going. I want to kind of dive into some of your experiences on your investigations. Maybe like we'll just dive right in, go scariest first, and then maybe some ones that just like caught you off guard, whatever your I guess most memorable investigations or stories that you have for us that you want to kind of just share.
Sure. I've been asked that a multitude of times, basically, like, what's your scariest? Because I think that's the natural is, everybody enjoys being scared, and of course, a lot of this stuff is like, oh, there must have been something that happened. I think, the first thing that I think about, and then I'll compare that to another story. So this would have been in Unexplained, the original territory, and this would have been one of our first stories that we were talk about how things and times are different. So Meridian, Mississippi basically sits close to the border of Mississippi and Alabama. It's, kind of easternmost city. And there's a mansion there, an antebellum type of mansion. It's called Maryhope. Now, there comes a lot of nice street cred when you work for a TV station, basically. You can kind of basically walk up and no one's going to question anything, and they appreciate stuff and everything because they watch the channel and all. And so in our case, it was Darren and myself and a photographer. And so we were there to have the pleasure of staying the night. Now, in today's world, the only way that that would happen is we would have had to, and I don't even know if being a TV station would have made a difference. It might, but most, groups are having to pay hundreds, or over 1,000 or whatever, basically, because now it's, kind of lucrative to do that, which I respect if that type of money is also helping the property. Like if it's a means to help like an old property, like repair it and stuff like that, I get it. If it's basically just doing it for some extra coin and taking advantage of people, it's like, well, now you're getting into those shady areas. But in this case, the people who worked at Mary Hope, who, gift shop, it was for tours, it was a tour home, like to call it basically your kind of your quintessential little old ladies. They didn't stay after closing. Like basically when it got to be 5 o'clock, they were done. And being there at night, no, not even something they were interested in. So we were given the keys and they were like, bye. Again, something that normally wouldn't happen because you're like, hey, partay, we got the whole place here. What's going on? We work for a TV station. We gotta be nice. So in part of that kind of checking it up and getting set up, I remember we had like an EMF meter, and it kind of like talk about two grown men basically kind of running away because this photog and I basically were kind of checking out stuff, and I had it, and I basically like put it into like a closet type of area, basically. Just was like kind of doing a preliminary check in it. And again, this was early on, so I'm going to say that this was, kind of like, being a noob here, basically. This thing went off loud and obnoxious in a way that I nor Rob, the photographer, expected it. And as we like to say, we ran like little schoolgirls, basically. I don't know how far. Uh, and it was just like, okay, why did that scare us? What just happened here, basically? It was almost like you could kind of think of Shaggy and Scooby and the legs spinning,
Your
basically, or
legs are
something.
just flying rampantly.
You know? And so we did that in this, like, okay, we'll never speak of this again. Of course, I've told this on multiple, podcasts since then. So, but it's fine. Rob's okay with it. He got out of therapy. But we had that happen. But then also that is a memory too of, again, it wasn't scary in the moment. Looking back, I was kind of surprised that it wasn't a little more alarming because, we ended up dozing off at one point, the three of us in kind of like the living room area. And I I wake up because I recall me waking up, but I wasn't conscious enough to hear Darren um I responded to no, hold a second. So it was actually Rob and Darren, basically, because yeah, I was remembering correctly that I wasn't totally awake, but was hearing on the video this, like, sounding like someone was just slapping the walls. It was like bab, 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 bab. And Rob was like, what was that? And Darren was like, yeah, that's what woke me up.
Oh.
Now, I woke up kind of hearing them talking, may have dozed off. I don't remember after that, but didn't hear that, So it's kind of funny that almost as if that moment where maybe in a dream state you think that you heard something, or was it a sound in your head that woke you up or whatever? Clearly they were hearing something, but again, were we all hearing kind of like the in your head? Because it's like, when we were conscious, there wasn't anything going on.
Yeah.
But what was definitely alarming, and it's one of those classic good TV moments to have, because I had a field camera, which, we're talking about late 90s here, not like today where, you could have cameras and camcorders that are like this, or heck, the fact that your phone is only yay big is a fully functional camera. But this guy was something that you could basically do curls with,
Oh, we're
just
talking Scream cameraman. What
so
was his name?
yes.
Danny?
Yeah, so we're talking about the field cameras where, you're lugging it and they're adjusting the lens, that type of size. So I have that, and it's got an external mic on it. But I'm following Darren, and I have just a little bit of light because this one was an older one, and it wasn't like, fully. Didn't have it fully prepared for like a production moment to have good solid sound and enough light, but it was enough to get this job done here at this moment. And we both start hearing what sounds like someone walking on the roof. Now, I know it was 2 stories. I want to say that it was 3, if memory's serving. But regardless, let's even just say it was 2 stories. And it had a flat roof that had gravel on it, like, a lot of especially old houses had. And so there is this And to me, to be able to hear that, even though, of course, you're talking about the ceiling right there, you'd have the roof on top. We're sitting there, and I'm getting that classic moment of zooming in because he's like, listen to this. Now, again, unfortunately, the mic wasn't good enough to be able to pick up that, but we were hearing it, and he's like, dude, you hear that? And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like someone's walking on the roof, because I have a distinct memory of if someone was in boots and walking, because it wasn't an animal, and we go outside and look, and it's like, well, how could anybody even get up there? Basically, there's no way that we could find. So it wasn't like someone was trying to play a prank on us. No one even knew that we were going to be there that night, except for like our newsroom. And so it was just that kind of type of moment to where that's surprising, scary, not necessarily, but definitely, like, especially early on, that was like, well, now this is kind of weird. Add to that, we review the footage afterwards, and this was classic, paranormal investigation stuff because while we were out of the house, the equipment that we left rolling, again, kind of same camera, I just like turned it on. We went down to get some snacks and whatever at a gas station. So we were only gone like maybe 30 minutes. But while we were out of the house, there's, different things recording. There's knocks next to recorders. There is clearly what sounds like about three different times a door slam. It's like I can't describe it any other way but a slamming door. Was anything weird when we got back? No, but all this stuff happened while we weren't actually in the house.
Wow.
You're putting on a show.
Yes, it's just kind of like, oh, y'all are cute, basically, but get out of the house and then we'll do stuff. And that's why I also like the idea of, especially if people are suspicious about a location, if something's going on, I'm like, I don't necessarily advise checking out your own place, basically, because you kind of have to have a certain metal at that point, or it's kind of like buyer beware. If you want to like set up a recorder, you might not like what you record. Yeah, a lot of folks will be like, don't investigate your own house. But if you ever have a question about like where you work or whatever, I mean, if you can like leave something, whether it's I mean, kind of hard to leave a phone, it's eventually going to run out of space. But if you
Hmm.
have a recorder or whatever, if something can roll for at least a good 30 minutes and like, okay, literally, if anybody comes in here, especially if it's a phone, again, short time, these doors will open. So you'll know if somebody comes in here, or, think through the possibilities of what would be noises and then basically record it. And then if you find out something, then it's interesting. It's a way to determine what's going on. And if you don't, then you'll be like, okay, maybe it's, just the pipes or something like that. But quick, the other side of it is flash forward now to 2019, USS Constellation in Baltimore Harbor.
Mm.
Again, not what I would consider scary, but you're talking about a big wooden ship. It's got a lot of history. And being in the bowels of that ship, quite literally, basically at the lowest point, is where that was one of the definite moments to where I'm like, yeah, I don't necessarily like who's at that end in the darkness or who's at that end in the darkness because everything else was kind of lit. And it was almost as if, like, some things were basically like, yeah, we're not digging that you're kind of like down in our space.
Mhm.
Again, some people want to immediately say, oh, it's evil, oh, it's demonic. And it's like, okay, just because you get a weird feeling about something doesn't mean don't jump to that extreme. All
Yeah.
it has to be is someone being like, I don't know you, so therefore I don't like you. Now, does that
Yeah.
make that a bad person? Does that make them a demon? No. It just means that there's someone who they're not quite as open to having a stranger basically mulling
They're a little
around their space.
sus. A little sus.
Exactly. See, we're bringing back sus. That's nice. That's good.
No cap.
Gotta make it full circle.
That's awesome. But the fact that we had some investigators, and we were with a Maryland Paranormal Research is the name of the team. We were with them, and like a group member, actually Mike Chen, who's also with us now. He got this incredible migraine out of nowhere. Now again, this is where you kind of put all this into perspective. It's like if you're not normally having, he's was not prone to have migraines, and certainly not like that. And it was at a moment when things were feeling weird, and then it happens. Is it, paranormal? It's kind of weird. So you just kind of have to like put a pin in that and certainly document the experience. And then of course it goes away and things seem to be okay around him, basically. Was it the energy? Was it just his body being weird? Don't know. Darren, on the other hand, felt wooden boards next to him move when no one else was moving, and he heard a creak as if someone basically had like stepped forward. And he distinctly was like, "There's nothing else that could have been." I don't doubt it. But see, I did experience it. He did. It certainly was enough to alarm him and freak him out a little bit. because it's stuff that you don't expect, and you're like, I can't explain that any other way, that that's what that is. But then that, again, I think that's where one's how much you've done something, how many investigations you've been on or whatever, your experience can basically build, so you can at least process something, as opposed to if all you're trying to do is do something for content, and every time the littlest thing happens, you scream and yell, basically, to where there's now you've just completely tainted all your evidence. And so how could you review of anything, basically, because you're freaking out.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, I guess I'm always curious too as to like how people investigate. Like, how do you get used to not being scared? Because I feel like sometimes there's some locations where that's got to be hard not to, especially if you're picking up the vibe. If there's a sus vibe there, then
Hmm. Well, it's kind of like, I liken it to be, let's say the quintessential would be the abandoned location. If we
Mhm.
want to be cute, we'll say an abandoned asylum, basically. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do a 30-minute alone challenge at 3 a.m. All right. So then I say, okay, first off, you're only doing that for the views.
Oh,
You're only trying to get some likes, some subscriptions, some whatever, because look at me, I'm sticking my face in the proverbial fan here, basically. There's nothing scientific about that. Now, I tack onto it the idea that are these things, I'm also enjoy urbexing to a bit. Again, talking about stories,
Is
abandoned
that like the
locations.
geocaching?
It's urban exploring. Like you go to abandoned places. I've done
Oh,
it.
see,
It's fun.
Hmm.
Grandma
See,
Ethel over here is getting hip with the terms, okay? So there's still some things
I
I don't know yet.
I used to do
keeping
it in high school. What?
keeping you on your toes. Yeah. So, but see, I enjoy that for the idea of like, hey, this is like a really cool, it's a time capsule, And again, same thing is like it's good to document, because unfortunately what sucks about so many of these locations is people find out where they are and they go in there and they basically be pricks and tear the things up and
Terrible.
tag everything, and it just becomes, it's worthless. Where
Mm.
as before, yeah, it may have been dusty or nature may have been reclaiming it, but now you've ruined it. This is why we can't have nice things. But if you want to go into a location, especially one that's well known, especially one that could be used for homeless, drug abuse, fill in the blank of whatever might be going on there, kind of have to look at it again, step back and look at something logically. If you have all of that basically going on, and there's mental health, and there's anger, and there's a lot of negative stuff going on, basically, what is that going to attract? And so now that's already there. Now you could be going there to say, oh, well, there's a story about this, this nurse or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe there is. But at the same time, especially if you are trying to go at night or at an unsafe type of time, there's no telling what you're going to find. And if you're not prepared, if you're not protected, then you get into the other subject that one of my team members experienced, which is an attachment. And attachments are no bueno.
So that was actually gonna be another question. Have you personally ever brought home an attachment? And then would you mind telling us, would it be okay with your teammate to share the attachment story?
Oh, absolutely. Because I
Okay.
mean, we've again documented all that. What this was, and we use this as a classic example, because so this is in Beaufort, North Carolina. There's a cemetery. It's called the Old Burying Ground. You're going back to like the 1700s, so you've got some amazing stories of, of someone who's basically like they're buried standing up, and I think they were from a ship, so they're buried standing up facing the water. um there's a grave of a little girl. All the details I'm a little fuzzy on right now as to what her story was, but basically people put trinkets and toys and things on that all the time to remember her. So there's all these little stories, and you have a lot of folks that are coming there. But Mike, in thinking back, realized he didn't prepare himself. He didn't pray up. He went into that. We were live. Darren and I, Darren was in Arizona. I was here in Maryland. Mike was, streaming from North Carolina. And we're going through, and it's getting dark, and no one else is in there. And so, from our vantage point, basically, here he is, you could, from the camera angle, he's basically looking into like this line of shrubs.
Was
And
he
all
completely alone? Like just
it
him
was
there?
just him. Nobody else was in
No.
this thing. You know, nobody. There were some people earlier, but then even before it got dark, there was like this owl who he kind of even felt in his head was like hooting as if to warn, like, you might want to go, bro. And just basically he just even thought it was strange, but it's again one of those to where you're like, is it really? Should I basically think that as a warning? Nah, I'll just keep doing this. And we're getting all these responses on the spirit box, and he's definitely kind of thinking there's something going on. And then he's facing these shrubs, basically. So a split second, that's all that we can kind of see is there's this shrub line. And then he basically turns around and was like, oh, F no, basically. And he starts running full tilt, and of course, Darren and I are like, oh, what is about to happen? Are we going to see like, Mike split his head open here basically? Because I'm like, it's dark. He's sprinting through this cemetery, gets out into the street and turn around as if like he was being chased by something is the only thing we could think. And he was just like, dude, I had to get out of there. There was something that was coming. I had to get out of it. And of course, like, okay, so just, and we're basically trying to walk him through, like, calm down, let's have a prayer, nothing to attach, nothing like that. Well, the rest of the night, he was basically hanging out with some friends and was around like kind of a campfire or whatever, and was just super angry basically. He just had all these negative type emotions. And so as we talk about it, we also worked with, she's a psychic artist, Angela Bowley. And so what makes her skill interesting is she paints what her intuition perceives as around her.
That's cool.
So, I'd never, before meeting Angela, I'd never heard of anybody who did that.
Me
I,
either.
to me, I feel like, again, it's got to be kind of a unique gift. And, her painting style is pretty cool too. But gave her a picture of Mike like from that night, so it was like a current picture. And I said, what do you see? What's going on with him? And so she comes back with, when she's done with it, basically the only way to describe it is like this lady with this skeleton face and all this crazy hair, and then this dude who kind of has like a wide brim hat, and he's kind of deformed, and he's over here. And so basically, it was like this, you could call her Ghoul, Brandon. Um,
But
no problem. Hey, I'll be here all week. Try the veal. Um, and to me it was just this, it was almost cliche-ish, but to me it was terrifying in a way, basically, of the drawing. And then this other little dude who looked deformed, and so basically there was like an explosion on a ship, and he gotten killed, and then he basically kind of like attached to her as kind of like a sidekick, and then she basically hung out there and waited for some sucker to be able to attach to.
oh,
Now, and she helped with the process and prayer and holy water, basically kind of had gave him some instructions on how to get some real protection to push that away. Went through that, but we had a follow-up live show of like, because she was going to share it, but I told Mike, I was like, okay, I can't allow you to go on this live show and see this for the first time. So I'm going to let you see this now, which is breaking a rule, because normally, if we ever did something like that, we let the guest see it basically live to kind of have like a real reaction. This was the first time it was just truly scary, though. And so I was like, I got to show this to you first so that you're at least prepared. And then we can go on, with the show and the reveal and everything like that. And he hadn't had a problem since, but that's still, of course, a joke. Is us just like, hey, dude, just be careful what chicks you pick up in cemeteries, okay?
Oh my gosh. That's terrifying.
Yeah, but I think that that's where I see these, and of course I'm at an age I can say kids here basically, and it makes me kind of feel old and sad at a brief moment. But it's like I see these kids doing these content creators and doing these stories, and I'm like, stop being so foolish, basically. Because I'm like, you go in there and you do stuff, especially in these abandoned locations. And then I know in some cases they're like, oh, I got an attachment, and it's just like, I'm going to turn that into a thumbnail and I'm going to make views. And it's like, it's not a joke. Let's just or let's just be really blunt. At the end of the day, it's either complete hogwash and every bit of it's fake and there's nothing real about any of it, and then therefore, okay, I guess you can act stupid, or I think, all of us may not understand everything, but there's certainly a spiritual world. There's certainly things that we don't understand. And so stop sticking your face in the fan, because you're going to bring hurt and trouble onto you that you may not know how to get rid of, and you don't know what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah. And not only that, but I think it like you really do, it's always the bad eggs that set the community back. Like I
Hmm.
feel like paranormal, like you mentioned earlier, there's a stigma. It has for a long time has been a very taboo thing. If you had something going on, you didn't talk about it, you kind of just suffered through it and maybe contacted your church or, but it was
Hmm.
something that was very hush hush,
Yes.
where like now, there's a lot of science behind it. There's people, like yourself that are trying to bring truth and science and evidence to the matter. And then when you have these silly people going out there and one dabbling, creating
Hmm.
larger problems than already existed at the property with the people. And even more sadly, when I say the people, there's families that genuinely need help and they go there for content and make the problem worse, is something that I've seen a
Hmm.
lot of.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like it's just not it's not worth it. Like you may get your 15 minutes of fame, but is it worth, that family either losing their home,
Mm.
losing a lot of things. We
Yeah.
can kind of go down that rabbit hole, but
Sure.
I just think also, like I said, the community, when you see people like yourself that work really hard to bring truth and transparency, and then you have these people that they get debunked or canceled and they're like, oh, see, the supernatural world and the paranormal, it's all a bunch of hogwash, and
Hmm.
so it sucks.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there's the whole, this is why we can't have nice things.
Hmm.
And what also doesn't help is there's a lot of drama that happens
Mm,
in the field, and
yeah.
it's like I don't wish to give that any more attention than that. But it's so simplistic to say that, people are people basically, and that's why I think a lot of times, because we've been guilty of this as well, is kind of like when you think everybody's on the same playing field, or everybody looks at the same, things the same way as you do, or kind of fill in the blank, and it's like, no, it's not that simple. That's why it's a lot better to, I think a better thing to do is, if you're going to collab with someone, now if you don't have any standards or any scruples basically or whatever, then I guess it really doesn't matter. But if you're like, hey, listen, this is the way we conduct an investigation, there's nothing wrong with saying, like, if you're going to collab with someone for the purpose of learning, which is what it should really be, is like, because we don't know everything, someone else doesn't, but two groups get together, more than likely you're going to have like, oh, I never knew that this was a thing, or wow, that's a really smart way to do that. You can apply that to anything in the world.
Yeah.
And if you have that conversation first, I think that saves a lot of heartache and stuff, instead of going into everything and everybody's this and everybody's that. And then suddenly you're like hurt and shocked when they're not that. And you
Yeah.
get backstabbed, or you get kicked off a team, or this or that, or whatever happens. And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, this is,
It's unnecessary.
it is basically. And everything doesn't have to be Bravo. I mean, everything doesn't have to be a show on Bravo where everything is drama, basically.
Oh, so you mean I can't go to a haunted asylum and flip a table like Teresa Giudice?
Oh, come on. You could, but I
Some
will
drama
not be.
with a ghost.
I won't be held responsible for what happens to you after that. So
I'm gonna flip the table and then get hit with the table.
Wrote back
you,
at you.
yeah, you mean none of that is real? I thought all of that was 100% legit. Come
The
on.
Ghoulfriend Hour WWE edition.
Yeah.
Ghoulfriend's Night Out. I'm gonna have Rachel and Taylor with the cards. You guys are gonna wear
Yes.
like little Ghoulfriend Hour outfits. You're gonna be like ding ding ding.
Good Lord.
Table match.
Yeah, see, she is unhinged, basically.
I
You're
am
saying that,
unhinged.
It's
It's a
in
whole lot
that
of
part of the-
tumbleweeds, dark castles, and lightning up there.
That part of the evening, huh?
Yeah,
Nice.
is that part. So
Nice.
since we're transitioning into like what I've been calling, I guess like ghoul talk. I don't know. We'll come
Yeah.
up with something
Yeah.
a little more fabulous, but
No cap talk.
It's on brand though. It's fine.
Yeah.
we try. We try and like
Mhm.
do ghoul centered stuff, I guess.
You should basically. I mean, let's stick with
Yeah.
that. Don't go
Yeah.
changing.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, now that you said that, ghoul talk sounds pretty good. Sounds legit.
Sold.
So we've been trying
Stamp.
to work in like prompts, like some fun little like either Q&As or things like that at the end of the podcast. So today's little prompt for you, yes, a little dirty little raccoon. Come on, Rachel. Come on, Rachel. I didn't see
Everybody
little
get-
raccoon hands.
That's the thumbnail. There's your thumbnail for the
Yes.
episode.
Little raccoon hands. So it's gonna be Kill Kiss Marry Cryptid Edition. I knew Rachel was gonna
the
lose it when
fuck?
I said it.
Nice.
So
Nice.
It's always
yeah, I know. I
surprising
see, and it makes you laugh. It's fun. It's a good little. Well, the icebreaker really should come at the beginning. So we'll call this the. What should we call it, Rick? I'm gonna let you name this one.
Let's see if you have icebreakers. Then
Is it the Ice
wow,
Remaker?
this is the ice remaker.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait, this is
Remix.
the deep freeze. Yeah.
That's what we're gonna call this. The end of the segment is the deep freeze.
There
Okay.
we go.
Yes.
So welcome to the part of the episode called the deep freeze.
Where we
With-
get stupid.
Yeah. Pretty much. I'm just so glad that Rick can match our crazy energy.
Oh,
Because nothing's
absolutely.
more uncomfortable than like when somebody can't match your energy and you're like, I'm so sorry if I'm like creeping you out. Like, I promise we are normal people. No, we're not normal.
No,
We're not.
You
no.
forget that there's people in the world that aren't like us. That's the sad part.
See,
Yeah.
I don't know how they live.
y'all are normal to me, which is not an insult, basically, because I feel like you're my people, basically. So
I
this
love
is good.
that. I love
you-
that.
Mhm.
Well, wait till you see how we truly end the podcast. I think we're going to have a
Ooh.
fun one with that. But
Ooh.
Kill, Kiss, Marry, Cryptid
Okay.
Edition. Taylor
Okay.
pick a cryptid, I'll pick a cryptid, and Rachel picks a cryptid.
Wait, I gotta look at
And
the
then
list.
we're gonna hand Rick his fate.
Oh, I'm going with my my favorite one right now.
Oh yes, okay.
It's the puck
Should I just? No, I think I'm gonna go with my favorite, and then I'll have to show Rick who's sitting on my desk right now.
Sweet. Okay.
You got one,
Okay.
Taylor?
I mean, I feel like
Taylor,
I've
lock
taken
it
a
in.
liking. I feel like I've taken a liking to Jim recently, so I'm gonna have to say Bigfoot.
Okay, all right, all
government.
right,
Okay.
all right. So Taylor, Bigfoot. I'm gonna go with a Pukwudgie.
hmm
Rachel, who are you?
You know, it's just my background. I have to go with Dog Man. I do dog stuff all day long.
I love it.
Dog Man.
All right, so you gotta kill, kiss, marry, and it's Bigfoot, a Pukwudgie, or Dogman, and that is quite a selection.
That is quite a selection. I think I may have to marry a Puckleji, basically, because just saying that name every
They're so
day and writing it on checks or
Isn't it
whatever,
great?
But then, wow.
Well, be careful
Yeah.
because you might marry them, but they
Uh,
may lower you to your death for your insurance money.
That's true. So there's always that possibility. But then I guess in this case, I heard that Bigfoot is a really good kisser. So, I think that's where we're at there.
Jim is quite a
Basically.
good kisser.
So I'm sorry, Dog Man, I'm just gonna have to
Yeah.
end you. So,
It's an M.
Dang, we gotta get
Yeah.
Dogman more love.
What? This?
Well,
Wait a
listen,
minute.
think of it this way. If my Pukwudgie kills you for the insurance money,
Hmm.
just slide into Dogman's DMs and be like,
Okay.
hey.
See, what's up? What's going
So-
on? Man? Yeah.
All right, bring him out now.
All right, so
Yes.
Rachel, this is our new official mascot. This is Flick.
Awesome.
He is the Pukwudgie because I
Look how
recently
cute he
found
is.
out that I am Algonquin Native American, and Sambal Trusses had taught me about the Pukwudgie, and I loved saying it. But then, like when I started looking into it, I was like, they both like light up my heart and terrify me at the same time because I'm
That's a
like, oh,
color
you're just
thing.
so cute and like lovable, but
Mhm.
you might push me off a cliff to my death
Hmm.
or
See,
convince me to just jump. So I'm not
that
really. So it's a little scary.
that's a very complicated relationship. Yeah.
Very.
It's like a
very.
Sour Patch Kid.
He's so cute.
Yeah, pretty
Sour,
much.
sweet, and gone.
Hmm.
One day you wake up, loving, cute relationship. Next
Mm.
day, you wake up
Dead.
dead.
Yeah.
You wake
See,
up dead.
Yeah,
see,
you know, did
there's
anyone
nice-
get my
Yeah.
scary movie reference?
that's nice. That's good. Good
How do you
tie-in.
wake up
It's-
dead?
Yeah. See, you're spooning basically, and everything's nice, and you wake up dead. So yes.
Yeah. So there you have it. That is our Kill, Kiss, Marry, Deep Freeze segment with
that was
with
excellent.
Rick. So as we like to end every podcast, first we want to thank you so much for joining us and matching our level of weird, and we absolutely adore you.
Yes.
We had so much fun. Wait, everybody put your hearts up so we can make a cute clip of this.
Love.
Okay, perfect. So we will definitely have you on in the future if you ever want to come back.
Sure.
And we'll hit you with another fun end segment and we'll make it even more unhinged. But we
Awesome.
had so much fun talking creepy stuff with you. And at the end of every podcast, we have a slogan because we love weirdos just like us. And we say, go ahead, Rachel, I'm gonna let you
Let's get weird.
get weird.
Weird. Mm-hmm.
So that's
I
our
hate
thing.
that
All
it-
right, so
everyone
we're gonna do it.
together.
Mind
All
you,
to-
it never ends up together.
never ends up-
No, so
never
one of
ends up
us, yeah,
together.
we'll probably be.
See, I'll count us down here basically. So
Let's
get,
get
weird.
Weird. Yes.
Wow, that
Look,
was
we
the best
did it.
one.
It was like slow-mo, but we all said it.
We all sound like there's
See,
like
I stretched it out
something.
intentionally so that
Yeah.
way it'd fill the voids. So
I like
Yeah.
it though. So I feel like I'm about to laugh at us. I'm like, this whole time we probably should just counted it down.
no, even when we do count it down, it doesn't work.
yeah.
Well,
See,
no, we
that's
can't all be winners. We try.
YOLO.
yeah. See, no, but you're winners with me. So that's all that matters. See?
I love it. I love it.
Free hugs.
Well,
See?
thank
Woohoo.
you. Oh, Taylor, we are
No,
having a team meeting
Rick
after
is a
this.
friend. Free hugs.
See?
Rick is okay to hug. It's when you're waving to random truck drivers that's a little scary.
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah, you just be selective.
Yeah.
Basically. Be
A
choosy.
little like you do
Yeah.
the what is that when you have your hand on the steering wheel? You just do the little.
Yeah. Oh, there's the you could
Yeah,
have the
the
one.
little-
Yeah, this, or you can do the. Yeah. Mhm.
I do the full hand. I go.
Oh,
Thank you.
Nice.
Taylor does the what do they call that? Where you're just like the Forrest Gump. She
Yeah,
does the
yeah.
Forrest Gump, where she's just like, "Hey,
Hi, Lieutenant Dan.
I don't know you, but come to my house for cheese sandwiches."
I'm just averting eye contact. I'm like,
Rachel, hold on. Before we do go, you gotta tell Rick our favorite t-shirt that you have.
Ooh.
We used it on our True Crime Tuesday segment.
oh, better to be a rude bitch than a dead bitch.
Boom.
Tell me
Nice.
that's not perfect.
Nice.
Hey.
That is-
So you just avoid eye contact, move by slowly, and you saw nothing here.
Yeah.
See?
But yeah, so thanks again for joining us. Until next time, we will talk to you guys. Stay weird, stay spooky, and I'm gonna say this on Taylor's behalf. Stay safe. Stranger danger. Bye.
Good candy.